Hey, Mama. One of my favorite things about podcasting is building a podcast community. You and the other mamas who listen to this podcast are truly the highlight of this podcast. There is so much power in building a community. In today's episode, I chat with Jessica Lamb, who is a fellow mama podcaster, all about how she has built a podcast community and the benefits of connecting with other like-minded individuals through podcasting. All right, let's jump into today's episode. Hey, Mama. Welcome to Marketing Without Socials for Moms. I'm your host, Andrea Singletary, daughter of the king, wife, mama of two, and visibility strategist for moms who want to make social media optional. When I'm not grabbing the 100th Go-Go Squeeze applesauce for my kids, you can find me curled up on the couch with a homemade chai tea latte and a good book. So tell me, have you reached the point in your business where you are done with social media burnout and ready to make social media optional? Are you consistently posting reels and carousels and showing up in stories, but sporadically signing new clients? Or maybe your season of life has drastically changed, meaning you have less time to show up on socials to grow your business. Trust me, I get it. I have been in each of these scenarios at some point in my business journey. It wasn't until I started leaning into marketing strategies outside of social media that I started having more predictability in my sales and growing my business in a way that supported my current season of life. And I want that for you, Mama. Each week, I'm giving you the inside scoop on how to increase your visibility and sales through podcasting, email marketing, and collaborations. All right, Mama, now grab your coffee, notebook, and pen, and let's dive into today's episode. All right, I'm sitting down to chat with Jessica Lamb, and we are going to be talking about building a podcast community for moms. So, Jessica, welcome to the show. Please tell us about yourself, who you are, what you do, and all about your family.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. My name is Jessica Lamb, and I'm the host of the Mama Making Podcast, formerly the Baby Making Podcast. But I live with my family here in the Chicago suburbs. My husband owns a gym here in Elgin, and then we live here with our son, Bodhi, and our two dogs, Winston and Rihanna. I'm the host of the Mama Making Podcast.
Yeah, so I'm excited to chat with you today. So talk to us about your podcast, the Mama Making Podcast. Like, what led you to start it?
Yeah, so it started out of just plain nosiness, but it's plain curiosity. I was very curious. I started the podcast before I had a baby, which seems kind of backwards, but I just had so many questions about like preconception, like trying for a baby, pregnancy, delivery, all the above. So I had a ton of questions and I wanted to know more, and I didn't want to put people I knew on the spot asking a million questions about how their pregnancy is going and how they're planning for their birth. And so I myself just consumed a ton of podcasts. And I was like, you know what? I might as well just get on a mic and start talking to other people who are willing to share their stories and what they went through and what it looked like. And so I kind of took this enormous leap to start a podcast. And I started it in 2021, early 21. Podcasted for about 2 years, and then had my own son in October of 22. So the podcast took a bit of a hiatus, and I felt like I was a different person after becoming a mom, and I felt like the podcast really needed to reflect that as well. I really missed podcasting. So after I took about a year and a half off, decided I'm going to come back, and the podcast is going to look a little different, but also the format will be a little different. So we're a guest-based podcast, and I talk to moms, I talk to experts, everywhere in between, from like trying for a baby, learning all the info about trying, and to grandparenthood. So really everything in between, any topic you could think of. the podcast previously was a little more like pregnancy and baby heavy, just because that's where I was in my life space. And so it has broadened a bit coming back. So yeah, I'm excited to be connecting with some new, interesting people and kind of go back in the archives of the old podcast. And my second guest actually is a really good friend of mine who is now nearing her end of her pregnancy, her first pregnancy. And her first episode was like questions she had about trying for a baby, being pregnant. So I would love to circle back with some of my old guests to be like, okay, where are we now?
Yeah. I love that. So many good things there. Like I do see that with a lot of people where it's either they have a need or they want to know more about something or they're looking for something. And so they start this podcast to kind of help fulfill that need and everything. And so that's amazing that you did that. And it's so needed. I can honestly say, like, even for me, what I've learned about like pregnancy and childbirth and all of that, I've gained the most knowledge from podcasts because, you know, you have those real raw conversations. Like, it's not all textbook lingo and that type of thing, but like the reality of motherhood, the reality of, you know, pregnancy and all of that. So that's amazing that you did that. And then as you transitioned and you became a mom and everything, you know, your podcast reflected that. And so that's an amazing thing. Like motherhood, it changes all of us. Like even for me, like I think about even the transition from a mom of one to a mom of two, that changed me and even kind of changed how I showed up on my podcast, the type of content I included and everything. So you talked to us, you know, mentioning that you did relaunch your podcast and everything. So talk to us a little bit more about that process. Like, what was that like for you as you were deciding, like, okay, I want to bring the podcast back, but I need to shift things. I need to pivot. So kind of like walk us through your process for that.
Yeah. So prior to having a baby, I just had unlimited time and I didn't realize that until afterwards. So
Yeah.
I had the time to have a full social media plan and have a ton of podcast episode prep where I do a deep dive on every guest and have this laundry list of questions. And I just really needed to change the way that I came at the podcast, given that I was not going to have the time that I had before. So I really focused on, okay, what are my favorite things about doing a podcast? And two, how do I need to pivot to make it make sense for me in my life space now? So I think what I was missing about podcasting was just, doing what we're doing now, just chatting with other people from different walks of life in different areas, and learning more about what they do and in their space of life or space of work. So my favorite part was the interviewing. And then my main goal has always been making sure that no matter who's listening to the episode, when they're listening, where they're listening from, that someone can always take something away from the episode. So maybe the guest you don't really identify with, but their message maybe you identify with or a tip they gave. So I think that was big for me too, that like any episode we put out could kind of stand the test of time and that anybody could listen at any time and be like, oh, I totally identify with that. Because I feel like a lot of times I found in motherhood, and I've heard from podcasting that it's really isolating. Like a lot of us are going through the same thing at the same time, but you feel so isolated still. So one of my big focuses for coming into this season of podcasting was making sure that someone could identify with something in the episode. So maybe it's, oh, my baby was totally this way and I feel seen in my experience. Or my baby wasn't that way at all, but my best friend's baby is a tricky baby, and I can totally understand where she's coming from now and be able to help her in ways that she needs me. So I think whether it's like a tangible like tip, like, oh, I'm going to start using this this educational method with my toddler, or it's I know more about choosing a nipple type for a bottle or a pacifier, whether it's something tangible like that, or I feel seen and I feel heard in my experience, or can do that for somebody else. Those are my main focuses going into it. So kind of having a diverse guest list, I'll say, kind of meeting all areas of motherhood. And then kind of meeting my own self where I was and making some major adjustments to what the podcast was going to look like. So like I said, I devoted a ton of time to prepping for episodes, and I just am not going to have the time to do that. So what I have done and pivoted is the graphics and design and website for the podcast has changed quite a bit as well. So it's very light, brown, chill colors. So I felt like it just better reflected me.
Yeah. What I really love what you shared was about how you recognize you were essentially, in this new season of life. And so you couldn't do things how you were doing them before. And so, like, instead of just giving up on the podcast, you looked at, okay, what can I do to make this fit my needs that I can realistically commit to and still serve my community well? And that's one of the things that I love about podcasting is that you can try out different things. Like, you really can find a way to make it work for you. So you can still show up, for your community and give them that value and everything.
Yeah. And I think that that's what kept me from podcasting right after having my son, was that I had this expectation of myself of what I needed the podcast to look like. So I was like, well, if I can't do it how I did it before, I'm not going to do it. And then as I was like in the thick of motherhood, in the thick of like postpartum anxiety and depression, I just needed another outlet to feel like myself again. And so that was kind of the antithesis of being like, okay, maybe I'm ready to come back, but I needed to have like a tough conversation with myself that it's not going to look how it did before. And that's what kind of inspired the relaunch, that the host is different. And so now what it all looks like is going to be different too.
I love that. So talk to us about like how your podcast has helped you in building a community for moms.
Yeah, so I feel like I'm still making my way on it. I think for me specifically, I think it has kind of helped me to identify people in my own friend groups or family groups that have the same interest as me in learning more and doing more for moms. But there's really been no other opportunity to like chit chat about it. So I think I've been surprised by like the family and friends who have stepped forward to be like, oh my God, this is exactly what we need, or this is what I've been wanting. And then slowly but surely, I feel like I'm starting to build a local community of people that I feel like are also committed to like doing better for moms. But then like the greater community, I'm still struggling to build. I think I really expected it. I mean, all the podcasts I follow have huge communities and in the Facebook groups and are chatting with each other in the Instagram comments. So I think it's been a great learning experience for me that like the more you're posting, the more you're interacting, the more you're engaging in the mom community, people will start to find you, whether it's through a friend or just on social media coming up on your like Instagram For You page. So I'm still kind of in the thick of building and rebuilding, quite frankly, a community around the podcast. But I feel like the diversity in guests, definitely, I'm a huge advocate for having guests on your podcast, because I think people have a following for a reason. I think whether it's a life space that they're in, or like hey, you remind me of my sister, or like I can identify with you. I think that we follow people for a reason, but then like close knit people to the person you follow also kind of helps to expand that group. So I'm hoping to continue to put out quality episodes and have quality guests that people can relate to. And at the end of the day, like I said, my goal is just if someone can take something away or feel validated in their experience from the episodes, I think that the community will grow pretty naturally.
Yeah, definitely will. Especially like you're having, different guests on who can share it with their own communities and everything like that. And I know like as you connect with other moms and just telling them about your podcast, what it's about, who it's for, and different things. I like to think of your podcast as being kind of like a resource library. So one of the things that I do is like in different Facebook groups that I'm in where my idol listener is hanging out. I like if I see someone asking a question that I have a podcast episode on, I'll share that episode and everything. So yeah, just doing things like that. But you've done a great job of building this community so far and have impacted people and everything. So definitely celebrate that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's hard when you're like behind the scenes, like
Yeah.
putting in the work to do the episodes and the graphic design and all of that and connecting with people. So you don't always get to see the impact. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I know you mentioned a little bit that you started to kind of grow a local community. So talk to us about that. Like, how has that been?
Yeah, so I attended I've kind of put myself in like a tricky box in that I am not a practitioner of any kind. I'm not a doula, I'm not a birth photographer, I'm not in the medical field of any sort. I'm just very interested in investing in moms and creating opportunity for moms. And so I went out on a limb over this summer before the podcast even relaunched and did a local birth expo. So it was a group of practitioners who wanted to serve the local community. A lot of doulas, a lot of birth photographers, midwives. And I was like, I'll just give it a shot. I think the goal was to meet moms and get some experts on the podcast in terms of guests. So I definitely put myself out there and was not really sure what I would get away from it. But from that event, I gained probably 4 or 5 different guests who were interested in being on, and then some new listeners that I didn't really expect to get from the event. So I think it definitely has my wheels turning about how I can be more impactful in my local community as well, and then kind of inspire some other moms, share along the way, and inspire some other moms to kind of step out of your box and create that community in their area wherever they are.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And kudos to you for stepping out and doing that. So talk to us a little bit about, any challenges you've faced as a podcasting mom and how you've overcome those challenges.
Yeah. Oh my God, time. I think I just did not I couldn't see where I could fit podcasting in. And I think unfortunately the old phrase of like you just fit it in and you have to schedule it and you make it work. I had an unexpected change in time recently. I previously, and I've talked on the podcast, I previously worked as a project manager. I have a history in fundraising for nonprofit and then moved on to project management, which is very similar. So after spending almost 5 years with a large health system, they wound up doing enormous cuts. And unfortunately, my team or myself and my boss were part of that. So I was given kind of the opportunity to invest more in what I'm doing with the podcast. At the time, it didn't seem like a great opportunity, but with the support of my husband, I've really been able to focus more on like what I want to do as a mom and where I would like to see my career go. but then also kind of refocus on the podcast and be able to kind of take this really unexpected, crazy life change and spend the time in reinvesting in myself. And part of that is podcasting. So I think, like I said, very unexpected, really hard to navigate, but having my position be eliminated gave me the opportunity to kind of reassess and say like, hey, maybe I am going to start freelancing a little bit more in digital marketing. Maybe I will spend more time investing in my environment. So like reorganizing my home to be efficient for our family, but then also to be like a place of comfort for our family and not this place that we're just like dropping in and out of. So I think while it was unexpected, I think being able to kind of reprioritize, a forced reprioritization was really challenging for me as someone who has been like on the go forever. This is really the first time I've been able to sit down and say, what areas do I want to focus most on? So I think luckily, podcasting made the list, top of the list. So while it's been challenging, it's been really exciting to be able to kind of choose my own path and see where I want to go with things next.
Yeah, I'm sorry you went through that, but I love how you kind of reframed it and look at, okay, what can I focus on? What can I essentially invest this extra time I now have? Like, what can I invest it in and everything? And so that's exciting too. You're going to start your freelancing journey and all of that. So for the mama who is like, okay, I think I want to start a podcast to build community, what advice do you have for her?
My advice would be to just do it. I think we get so caught up in the logistics of things, like, how am I going to do this? I need to research all the platforms. I would say get on YouTube and see what people have to say about podcasting platforms and all of that, and really just do it. Get out there, find your niche and see what you want to focus on, and then just get after it. It can be as simple as just hopping on your laptop, using the mic you have, plugging in some headphones and going with it. I've been able to be pretty successful at doing my first year of podcasting was all of my platforms were free. It's a little bit limiting, but I've since outgrown that. So giving myself the opportunity to just trial and error in the beginning, I think one, just go for it, get over yourself and your limiting beliefs, to use a buzzword, and just get started.
I love that. That's something I tell my clients all the time. Like, don't get so caught up in the tech and different things like that. Just get started. But I do have quite a few resources for you guys if you are looking to start a podcast. So I will make sure to link that in the show notes. But like Jessica was saying, like, you can grow and as your podcast grows, you can shift and change things. So whatever is going to be the least path of resistance for you, so that way you can hit publish on your podcast, go that route and you can tweak and change it along the way.
Yeah, and I think a well-produced podcast is great, but I think at the end of the day, like, you just want to reach people and you just want to talk about your thing, and I think that just getting on and figuring it out is key.
Yes, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Jessica, just for sharing about your podcasting journey and how you've been able to build community through podcasting. So please let the listeners know where they can connect with you and learn more about you and your podcast.
Yes, you can find me on social media, both Facebook and Instagram, at the Mama Making Podcast. You can listen anywhere. Our main places are Spotify, Apple, and Amazon Music. But we're on a ton of other platforms. Those are just the most popular. And then you can always email me at themamamakingpod@gmail.com. I'm always looking for guests. I'm always looking to connect. I'm always looking to see what topics moms and families are interested in learning about. So my DMs are always open. I'd love to chat.
All right. I will make sure to link all of that in the show notes. Well, thank you again just for sitting down to chat with me and just sharing about yourself and your podcasting journey.
I'm happy to. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Hey, Mama. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to hang with me. I would love to keep the conversation going. So head to mamaturnedmompreneur.com/marketing without socials to join my email community. I share even more tips and strategies for building a business that doesn't rely on social media and one that fits your current season of life, as well as more behind the scenes of mom and business life. All right, Mama, that's it for today, but I'll catch up with you again next week.